APWU family, and greetings. This is President Mark Dimondstein with our podcast, Communicating with You, the Member, recording just a few days before Labor Day and Labor Day weekend. So again, greetings to one and all. Thanks so much for tuning in. And before we get started, I want to remind all of you that you can download the podcast on all streaming services, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you choose to listen to podcasts. So we have a lot to talk about as usual, but let me just start by wishing everybody a happy Labor Day, a holiday that recognizes the contributions of working people. It's us that create the wealth. It's us to make the world go round. So it's good to have a holiday. But this holiday takes on some extra importance because while we have a lot of picnics on Labor Day, we have some parades, this really needs to be a Labor Day of resistance and of struggle. So here we are, Labor Day. And by the way, the AFL-CIO, in coordination with May Day Strong, is planning a whole series of events all over the country and actually through Labor Day week. I encourage everybody, if you're listening to this before Labor Day, look on our website. There's a map of actions and of rallies and so on that you can link into in your area. If it's after Labor Day that you're listening, I hope you did get out there. But think about it. Here we are celebrating Labor Day when there's a major assault on our federal workers, on federal unions. All that's going to trickle down to others, us, to the private sector. So we're out here taking action on Labor Day against an administration that has destroyed union contracts at HHS, terminated just unilaterally. It's over. You don't have union contracts anymore. At VA, and that affects also the services that our veterans need and have earned. At EPA, we have new attacks on the honesty of the CPI calculations coming from this administration. That affects our COLA. We have new attacks on vote by mail. Not only affects our work, but deeply affects the people of the country and their small d democratic right to have access to the ballot box. We're in a period of these absurd tariffs that are not only a hidden tax on consumers and working people, but think about this. When some people may say, well, that doesn't affect us as postal workers. Well, let's see about that. We all go to the grocery store. We all go shopping. We all have to buy goods to keep us and our families rolling. But on top of that, the European and other posts around the world have just canceled all mail to the United States of America because of the tariffs and the confusion around the tariffs. That affects our work. That affects our hours. That's going to affect our PTFs and how many hours they get. It's going to affect overtime. It's going to affect our PSEs and whether they get enough hours to live. So all of these things are interconnected. So again, hope you were out there on Labor Day. If you're listening to this before Labor Day, please get out there. It's a whole week of action led by the AFL-CIO. We'll see you in the streets as we carry on the spirit of the APW, which means standing up and fighting back. Enough on that. I want to bring in our terrific Industrial Relations Director, Charlie Cash, to talk to all of you about the implementation of the gains, the general wage increases, the COLA, and other economic gains of the new contract. And of course, when we signed the contract, we signed on July 11th after a strong ratification yes vote from all of you, 95%. But then we have to implement, and I'm sure this is on everybody's mind. So let's get right into. Welcome, Brother Cash. Pleasure to have you back on our podcast.
Hey, thank you, President Dimondstein. It is great to be here. I always appreciate the opportunity to speak to the members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about our pay changes and our retro pay increases that are coming and the payments. And I'm excited to talk about what's going on. And right before Labor Day, a holiday that belongs to the workers. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It belongs to the workers. So let's get out there and make sure we're supporting the men and women. And no matter what you do this holiday, let's make sure you remember that this is your holiday, the holiday for the workers who make America go.
That's right. So let's break down some of the economics with our COLAs and pay, because the contract talks about future, it talks about present, and then it talks about past. So let's just start, I think, with the easy one, and it's right before us. So the contract has 6 COLAs, 2 each year under the 3-year contract. We missed the one in January that was due in March. But let's talk about the current one, which is the second COLA. So why don't we just focus on that first? What is it? When are people going to get it? Is it on time? Is there any retroactivity connected with the second COLA? You want to take a bite at a time, Charlie?
Well, sure. The second COLA for career employees was determined by the what we call the Consumer Price Index W 1967 equals 100. I know that sounds kind of technical, but that is the index that we use that is produced by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. With the increases in that over the last 6 months, the career employees are seeing a COLA increase of $811. That increase will be effective September 6th of this year, which will be, I believe, pay period 20 of this year. And that $811 will be reflected in your paychecks on September 26, 2005. It is on time.
That's
The
great.
Postal Service completed the programming, so there won't be any retroactive payment for that $811 COLA, but it's on time and it will be showing up in your paychecks, which is great news. And to be honest with you, that was something that surprised me that it was going to be on time. Our sisters and brothers in the ITAS portion of the APWU that programs this, they got the instruction to do it and they got it done. So it's great news for us.
Yeah. You and I had talked that we were concerned that they may not make it on time, and then we get the confusion of the retroactivity on the second COLA. So that's one aspect. That's folks, that's your union contract at work. So the next thing let's talk about is we have the pay raise that was left over from November 2024, the general wage increase that obviously we missed then, and we have to figure out then what happens going back. And then we have the first COLA of January that was due in March. So there's two aspects of that. Let's talk about getting the pay right first, and then let's talk about the retroactivity for those things. So what's going on that front, Charlie, in terms of when that past general wage increase from November 2024 and the COLA from the early part of 2025 is going to be reflected in our paychecks?
So, Mark, that's a great question. We have two pay increases that are due to the employees, to the career employees from the 2024 to 2027 National Agreement. We have our general wage increase, which is a 1.3% increase, which was scheduled to go into effect in November of 2024. And then we have that $395 COLA that was scheduled to go into effect of March of 2025. According to the agreement that we reached with the Postal Service and that our members ratified overwhelmingly, that 1.3% increase and that $395 COLA for career employees, that is a period of what we call the stopgap. Well, that's what the Postal Service calls it. When we go into a contract, they have to program what they call the stopgap. The Postal Service successfully completed programming the stopgap, and those pay rates, the 1.3% increase and the $395 COLA for career employees, went into effect on August 23rd, 2025, which is pay period 19, 2025. And those pay increases will show up on September 12th, 2025. Now, if you recall, I was saying the 1.3% and the $395 COLA for career employees. But it's more than that. Our non-career postal support employees, they will also be receiving that 1.3% increase, but they will also receive an additional 1.0% increase. They do not receive COLA, and because they don't get COLA, we've always been able to negotiate another additional percentage to make sure they get a little bit extra. So when you add the 1.3% and the 1.0% extra for PSEs, they get a 2.3% increase that would have gone into effect in November of 2024. They also will see that 2.3% increase in their pay starting August 23rd, 2025, and reflected in their paychecks dated September 12th, 2025. So this is a big deal. And
Yeah.
historically, the post office actually got this stopgap payment done much quicker than they normally have in the process. I was pleasantly surprised by this, and it was great news to see this done.
Yeah, hey, we talked about that the other day. We signed the contract, the new contract on July 11th, and the pay now is up to date, so to speak. Less, basically within 6 to 7 weeks. So that is really good news. And so here we are. We're getting, right in this same period, we're getting our COLA that we missed reflected in our pay now. Our November pay raise for both career and PSEs reflected in our pay. And for the career employees, 2 weeks later, they're going to get the second COLA reflected in their pay. So that's really another example of what it means to be union, what it means to have a voice at the bargaining table, and how it uplifts all of us and our families. Now, there's a third aspect to
Right.
actually, there's a little bit of a fourth one too, but the third one is okay. So we missed November 2024. We missed for both career and PSEs. Now that's going to be in our paycheck, but it's just starting out in our paycheck. Then we got the missed COLA of January that was due in March. That's now in our paycheck. But what about the time in between that we haven't had at the time of what we call the retroactivity? So how is that being addressed, and what can people expect there?
So again, another great question, Mark. And this, to be honest with you, wherever I go, whoever I talk to, I get phone calls about it. That is the number one question that I get. When are we going to get our retroactive pay increase? And you've already identified the pay increases that will be in it. The 1.3% for the career from November of last year, which is 2.3% for PSEs from last year, and the $395 COLA for career employees that was due in March of this year. The Postal Service, again, because they successfully programmed the systems, we're looking at what we call the retroactive period, or what they call the stopgap. So that retroactive period will be November 16th of 2024 through August 22nd of 2025. That's a period that the Postal Service owes our employees that increase. We will, for short, in short, we call that the retro period. So that period, the Postal Service owes all employees who worked during that time back payment. And they have announced to us that that payment will be made to our employees. And look, I'm not exactly thrilled about this date, and I'll talk a little bit more about this and why that date might be. But they've announced that the period of time will be paid on April 10th of 2026. I know that's a long ways off, but we have to remember that we're not the only union out there. We're not the only group that the Postal Service is having to do work for, and that they're having to do programming of the systems. And when I say the Postal Service, Mark, I'm talking about our employees, the people that the APWU represent in information technology and accounting services. They have to program the changes. They have to do Form 50 updates. They then have to run that against all of the hours worked, every holiday, every night differential hour, every hour they worked, if there were step increases involved. And so then they have to run this for each employee. So it does take quite a bit of time. So again, ours is April 10th, 2026. But because within just a short amount of time, the Postal Service settled 3 contracts with bargaining unit employees that represent hundreds of thousand employees. They first settled with the NALC. Then they settled with the National Association of Rural Letter Carriers, and then they settled with the APWU. Historically, programming and retroactive pay is done in order. The NALC is complete. They should be getting their retroactive pay within the next couple weeks. The rural letter carriers is a very complicated pay change, and I can't go into their negotiations or what they decided. Although I'm actually here in Wisconsin at an event, and I was able to speak with some people from ITAS because this is their region, and they said that the rural letter carriers programming changes are extremely complicated, and and it's taking them quite a bit of time. The rural letter carriers are due in February of 2026, and then we're due in April, 3 pay periods after the rural letter carriers are done. So again, I mean, I'm pushing the Postal Service to try to move it up. But when I push the Postal Service to try to move it up, I'm also putting an extra burden on our employees. But we want to push it up, but it is complicated. We are third in line. But the fact that the Postal Service got our stopgap done is amazing. And that's the important thing to remember. You are getting the new rates. You don't have to wait for the new rates. You are going to have to wait for a little bit of time to get the retroactive pay. But our employees who work during that period will get that retroactive pay. And Mark, if you'll indulge me for a minute, I just want to make sure as well that everybody understands that this retroactive payment is not just for the active employees. If you were an employee working during that time, any time period from that November date to August 22nd, you're going to get a retroactive check. If you were an employee who resigned, you're going to get that check. If you were an employee who chose to move to a different craft, you're going to get that check. If unfortunately an employee passed away, the estate will get a check for that retroactive period. And of course, any employee who retired, whether it was regular retirement or through our VERA, is going to get a retroactive check. Now, those checks will be sent to their last office of record, and the employee or their families will have to go and pick that check up. But everybody is going to get a retroactive check. Now, what's important to also remember about the retroactive checks as we go to the retirees, the Postal Service will have to process that. They'll have to process the Form 50s, and then they will actually send an update to the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM. And then OPM will have the responsibility to go in and update the employee's records, and it could change and increase the annuity of the employees who have retired. Once it goes to OPM, though, Mark, we don't have any timeline on that. It's up to OPM when to process that and push it forward to change the annuities. That could take some time. And to be frank, with the changes of the administration and the attacks on the federal workers, OPM has shrunk. People need to be prepared that it could take extra time to get their annuities adjusted for the retroactive pay.
That's right. And also be ready to speak up to stop this rampaging through federal government, the federal workers, the federal unions, and the services that we, the people, need. And that's an example of the services that postal workers need. Charlie, I said there were three main questions, but there's also a fourth piece. And that is, there were some aspects of the contract that affect economics. There were some changes in the steps. There were some changes in night differential. What are the time frames for that people can expect and look forward to there?
Well, Mark, there are some things in the tentative agreement, which of course was ratified. There were four specific things that, and I'll start with these four specific things that said, the Postal Service has until the first full pay period, 180 days after ratification, to implement certain pay provisions. So when we did the calculations on that, that would have been, that 180 days would have been the third pay period of 2026. And that would have started in, I want to say, January 10th of 2026. So the Postal Service had until January 10th, 2026 to implement some of these pay changes. To be honest with you, I was actually stunned when I received notification from the Postal Service that they're actually accelerating these changes. And all of the changes, and these are going to be pay period 24 of 2025, which begins November 1st, 2025. This is actually 4 pay periods sooner than they had the right to get these done. So we're going to see the upgrade of grade 3 to grade 4 begin on that pay period 24 of 2025. The next thing that we're going to see is the elimination of the bottom step in grade 4, elimination of JJ in grade 4. That will also begin pay period 24, 2025. And then the big one that I like to say and talk about is the elimination of that lower step that in the 2021 national agreement we had agreed to for PSEs who were converted to career under the 24-month MOU. They were converted to a step GG. That is also being eliminated on pay period 24 of 2025. Now, let me just say about that step GG. Mark, that was huge that we were able to agree to a automatic conversion for PSEs in certain offices, in offices other than the RMPOs. And of course, you and I, we talked extensively about this in negotiations, and the former director of industrial relations as well, of whether or not we wanted to accept a lower step to get this conversion. We were able to agree to that, and we agreed to that lower step. But the Postal Service and the APWU knew that it was not working. So the fact that we were able to, after one contract period, be able to eliminate that lower pay a step, but keep the 24-month conversion for PSEs is huge. It's gone now. So on that pay period 24, 2025, anybody who was converted to GG and is still on that step will go to FF, and anybody who is converted in that will also go to FF. That's a huge step for us. It's huge progress, something we can't forget about how important contract negotiations are and how important little bites in each contract negotiations is to our overall history and collective bargaining history.
Good point, Charlie. And just to be clear to the listeners, on those three things that Brother Cass just addressed, there's no retroactivity associated with that. So that was part of what we agreed to. Management had time to implement it. They've accelerated, which is great. But once we get it, it'll all be prospective. It will all be going forward. What about our night diff changes? First change in night diff in 30 years. When is
Yes,
that
Mark.
take?
Yeah, I will go into that, but I also need to back up because I forgot to mention the PSE changes because we actually were
That's
able
right.
to add that there is a PSE, for lack of a better term, a new PSE step progression. We were able to negotiate a new PSE progression. So after 26 weeks, they will get a 50-cent pay increase. That will go into effect on pay period 1 of 2026, which begins December 13th, 2025. Again, 2 pay periods earlier than it was due. That will also change what we negotiated for the PSEs and the RMPOs, who will get an additional dollar after a waiting period. So if you're in an RMPO, after 26 weeks, you would get 50 cents. And then later on, you would get an additional dollar for an additional $1.50 an hour in total. Those will go into effect on pay period 1, 2026. And if you're a PSE and you've already met the waiting periods, both for the 50 cents and for a dollar in the RMPO, you will get those as well on pay period 1 of 2026. And again, Mark, like you said previously, those are not retroactive, they're prospective, and it's still a huge gain for us and a huge gain for our PSEs.
Absolutely. And just to make it very clear, too, for our hardworking PSEs, the extra dollar, and it's good for the career members to also know that extra dollar is for the 4-hour RMPO PSEs that are not covered by the automatic conversion after 2 years. So they don't have the opportunity to convert to career. And that backstop, I think it's a 4-year. You have to have 4 years in that office to get the extra dollar. So we wanted to make sure, since they don't have the automatic conversion opportunities and much less opportunities across the board to obtain a career position, that we were doing our best to uplift them as well. So that brings us to the last point, I think anyway, on the economics here, and that is the change in night diff. While it's not going to represent huge numbers, it does represent a first shift back towards increased night differential for the first time in, I think, 30 years. So what does that look like, Charlie, in terms of timing?
Yeah, Mark, that's also a big deal for employees who have been around for decades. I believe it was in the early 90s, mid 90s when an arbitrator took away our night differential percentage and changed it to a fixed amount. And so for the first time ever, we are changing our night differential. So there are going to be a couple changes to night shift differential. There will be a 4% per pay period. And when I say 4%, 4% of the current night differential that will be added onto that. And that begins in pay period 21 of 2025, which begins September 20th of 2025. The programming is done for that. That is going to go into effect. There won't be any retroactive on that, but that's the first change. So again, September 20th of 2025. There is another increase to our night differential, and that is a 2.0% of the night differential that will be in effect at that time. That also goes into effect of pay period 21, but of 2026. So on September 19th of 2026, the night differential will increase by another 2.0%. So, a small gain, a beginning to shift back to higher night differential because our employees who work nights, they deserve that extra pay. Working nights is hard. I worked tour one myself, graveyards, owl shift, whatever you want to call it. I worked it for 11 years as well. And that's an increase that is timely and needed. And look, working nights is very hard on your body. And so it affects a lot of things. And so we deserve to be compensated extra for our night shift work. And so this is a big deal. Even though it's a small change, it's a step in the right direction that we hope to capitalize and gain more in the future.
And Charlie, just a question. So does the night shift changes apply to our PSEs?
Absolutely. They also get night shift differential. And so this is for both career and non-career employees.
Right. And for some of the newer employees that may not know or work in offices that are daytime work, night shift differential applies to hours worked between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m.
That is correct. Yep.
So, well, thanks so much for joining us, Brother Cash. This is information that the members are really looking forward to knowing, and just listening to you. So we got in the pay right now is the first COLA, not the retroactivity, but the pay of the first COLA. Also to miss November, 1.3 for careers, 2.3 for PSEs. Also 2 weeks later, the $811 second COLA, and if I understood you correctly, in that same period of September, those who are night shift workers will have an increase in night differential. Way to go, APW. Way to go, members that give us the foundation to negotiate these kind of wages and benefits. And we'll certainly work on, no promises here, be hard to change, but Charlie and I are both committed to seeing if we can get management to speed up the retroactivity. If not, it'll be there when we get it. It'll be real money. It'll be well earned. And we're proud to have been representing all of you at the bargaining table. But always remember that without all of you, there would not be bargaining, because management only sits down with us because we're union strong. We have a slogan that says union strong all day long. And I was wearing it. I wear it a lot. And I was going through an airport one day waiting in line. A guy looks at me. He says, "Does that mean you're not strong at night?" But we're strong at day and night. So there we go, folks. Charlie, thanks. Keep up the good work out there.
Hey, thanks, Mark. And if I can just finish up real quick, I just want to remind all of the people that we represent that the pay increases, the pay charts that will show you what you're getting paid, they are posted on our website at apwu.org. You can go, when you go to apwu.org, along the top, you'll see a menu that says My APWU. Click on that. They can then click on the pay information, and they can go and see what their pay increases will be. So again, it's there. Go look at it, go download it, and we'll keep updating those pay charts every time a pay increase comes along.
Okay, great. And one thing the listeners would be interested to as well, I know you and your staff, Charlie, are working very hard for the final proofing of the contract. That has to be done we've done our side. We have to coordinate with management. We're trying to get that done as quickly as possible. It's generally a smooth process. We have expectation will be that too. And as soon as we get that done, the final, all of the final changes will be certainly posted. And I know, Charlie, you're working hard to get it to the printer as soon as we get that done. So we're pressing management to make sure we keep these meetings going, get it right, and then we'll get all of that out to the members ASAP. Thanks again, Charlie.
Hey, thanks. Always a pleasure, President Dimondstein. It's always great to talk to the members. I love the opportunity to speak to them and to have these podcasts. It's always great to talk with you and everybody else on this. And I look forward to continue working for the APWU. I look forward to continuing fighting against the changes and standing up for American values and the American Constitution and protecting this postal service. So thank you for the opportunity and solidarity, my sisters and brothers. Thank you so much.
Okay, Charlie. Thanks again. It's been good. folks, that was really good information. But let me run through a few other things that I think have some importance and I think are on people's minds. So again, we talked about this in our last podcast, in our news service bulletins, in our magazine, in our communications. Happy 250th anniversary of the post office. We figure we're about the 12th generation of postal workers, dedicated to the people of the country, dedicated to the mission. And so this is a great opportunity to rally the public behind not just the historic importance of the post office, what it's meant to the country over the last 250 years, but what it means going forward and why it's so important to make sure that these privatizers, these billionaires that want their hands on the $80 billion or more a year that the post office generates through, not through tax dollars, through postage, they want their hands on that money and they want to laugh all the way to the bank. So we've launched a campaign the rest of this year. The anniversary itself was July 26th, but this is the 250th year. And what we're asking everybody to do, and everybody can get involved with this, working through your local and state elected leaders, but we're asking everybody to get to local city councils, local mayors, local county commissions, whatever it's called in your communities, whatever the local government is called, to work to get a proclamation passed, signed, and promoted about the 250th anniversary and the need to keep the Postal Service public and the need to fight back against these assaults on it. And so that's the post office is going to be saved not in the courts. It's going to be saved in the courts of public opinion. And so we have a great opportunity with this 250th year. The people still overwhelmingly support, need, and trust the post office, even with the problems in service and staffing. And so we're asking everybody to get involved. Almost everybody knows a city councilor or put up a yard sign or worked a poll or gave a little money, whatever. Go, and this is not partisan. This is bipartisan. Work with your local leadership. Get a little committee together if that works best. Start meeting with the mayor. Start planning. We have a sample resolution you can get at apw.org/250. You can use that as a basis. It'll change. Some city managers and mayors may say, well, I like it, but I want to add something. Or I like it, but I want to subtract something. That's all fine. Then bring people to a meeting. Do the work ahead of time, but then bring members to a meeting. Bring community allies and customers to the meeting. Bring veterans who get their medicine through the mail to a meeting. And then once it passes, talk about it. Get a news article in the local newspaper. Do a letter to the editor. Send us a copy. And we can do this. If we do it right, we're going to get thousands of these. We have locals that represent offices in 150 different towns. Every town has a government entity. So this is a great opportunity to organize our members. And if we don't already have relationships with the mayor and the city councilors and the county commissions, this is a good way to help build those relationships. So again, happy 250th, but let's use it to really send a message to those that want to destroy us, that the people are behind the public post office. Yes, we want new services. Yes, the world's changing in the way we communicate with each other. But this postal service belongs to the people. It needs to be vibrant and can be vibrant for generations to come. But it is a struggle. And getting out there with your local government entities is part of that struggle. And we all have a role to play in there. We also have an organizing drive led by our organization director, Anna Smith. We're always looking to build our strength and power. You can see we just talked about the contract. We get that. That's a question of power and leverage. And the more members we have, the more power and leverage we have. We lost a lot of members in the early out. We were glad to negotiate the early out. People certainly wanted, there were those who wanted it and were eligible. A lot of people took advantage of it. We also know we're facing the kind of broad assaults that we've never faced before. When they're coming into government entities that have contracts with AFGE, American Federation of Government Employees, and other unions, and just come in and say your contract's terminated, that's a threat to us. When they come in and say there's no longer union time, that's a threat to us. When they come in and say there's no longer a steward's room or a union room to take care of business in some privacy, that's a threat to us and to all of labor. So we definitely want to build up our strength The campaign is basically through the months of September and October. And it's called Unite and Fight. That's a good slogan because that's what we have to do as working people and as a union movement. We have to unite and fight in solidarity. Injury to one is an injury to all. So our campaign is called Unite and Fight. And we're going to need all of you to get involved. Every single member, if we put our shoulder to the wheel, can probably sign up one non-member, unless you happen to be working in a post plan office by yourself and you're the member and you're 100% organized. But basically, most of our members know non-members. You may bowl with them. You may not even realize they're non-members. So we rely on all of you to talk up the union, to get everybody on board and stop the selfishness that the non-members have. Because at the end of the day, when you cut through all the excuses, just a question of greed. I can get somebody to pay my way. But when somebody takes that approach, we're all weaker. So keep up the good work on that. There's a lot of information already on our website. There'll be more information in the next magazine coming up. The other thing I want to remind everybody is we have a national officer election that's going to be, the ballots will be mailed out soon, sometime between September 10th and September 15th. We are a very democratic union. Take advantage of it. Let your voice be heard. The ballots will come. They'll also have a magazine of different candidates' articles. I encourage you to read it, think about it, and cast your vote as you see fit. So keep an eye on that. The Wells Fargo ad. We've done sharing a lot of information with all of you, that the Wells Fargo paper from Wells Fargo Equity Research from February 27th lays it out from the horse's mouth of what's behind and who's behind privatization. It's Wall Street, it's the hedge funders, it's the corporate interests that they represent, that they make money off of, that they make money with. And so Wells Fargo is open about and cheering on the privatization of the post office, either in whole or in part. And while they recognize it's going to be hard to do as a whole, they're really pushing to separate out the parcels and to privatize the parcels. And if that happens, we're not going to be able to survive, folks. We all know we all work with our eyes open, letters down, letter volumes down, flats volume down, package volumes growing. We got to have that growth. Doesn't mean letters and flats are unimportant. They're very important to the people. But the reality is the internet's changed the way we communicate with each other. So the Wells Fargo ad tied into other work around Wells Fargo, like the demonstration and the recent demonstration in New York City at Wells Fargo. It's an opportunity to alert the public as to what's going on and who's behind it. That ad gets done mainly through all of you sharing it. We have a whole social media campaign. We have run it on TV. But think about this. If everybody looked at it, it's a QR code. It's right on the website. If everybody looked at it and then shared it through your social media accounts, and you got Facebook, however people can share it, share it. And if you have 1,000 people, get 10 other people to watch it, you just had 10,000 people watch the ad. And that just can be multiplied and multiplied and multiplied. We've had millions of people watch the ad, and we need many more millions to watch it as well. And if you haven't watched it, please do. If you have watched it but not shared it yet, please share it. And then if you've done neither, watch it and share it. So keep up the good work out there. So there's been a new serious attack from the President of the United States on vote by mail, actually speaking out, saying there can be no honest election, in quotes, with vote by mail, and threatening to issue an executive order trying to ban vote by mail throughout the country. That would be a huge blow to the people of this country and their voting rights. It'd be a huge blow to postal workers. It's based on a big lie that the 2020 election was stolen and that somehow you and I as postal workers and the whole process of vote by mail was the culprit. When the reality is proven by courts after courts after courts, research after research after research, study after study after study, that vote by mail is safe, secure, trusted, and ever more popular amongst the people of the country. This is about voter suppression. And this is also about denigrating what we do as postal workers, that somehow what we do, vote by mail, is secure, it's safe, it's well-liked. The last election, 47 million people voted by mail. The election before that, in the heat of a terrible pandemic, I think about 60 million people used vote by mail. It goes back to the Civil War, and it certainly was used over the decades for military personnel who are deployed in other parts of the country or other parts of the world. So we want to make sure that we stand with this nonpartisan, small d democratic right that the Postal Service, you and me, postal workers that are trusted, are giving on a nonpartisan basis, on a basis of civic duty, access, the cherished right to vote, giving people access to the ballot box that they otherwise may not or would not have. So we have to be very vigilant on this fight. Last thing I'm going to say is hats off to the flight attendants of Air Canada flight attendants. And I'm raising it because often workers, we don't realize our own power. We don't realize that what we do is so valuable and it can't be easily replaced in many cases. And it's very similar to what happened in the 1970 Great Postal Strike. So the Air Canada flight attendants have been in negotiations for a long time. And what they're mainly fighting over, as I understood their struggle, was the question of being paid for their work. What a lot of people don't know is flight attendants, both in Canada and in the US, maybe in other places, I don't know about that, they don't get paid for boarding time. So if you've ever gotten on a plane and you're boarding in, and a flight attendant greets you, good morning, good afternoon, how are you, whatever it is, they're not getting paid for that. And so they were fighting for boarding time. They also, flight attendants often don't get paid if the flights are delayed. So you come in, there's a problem with the plane, there's a problem with the weather, they sit there for 3 hours as workers. They're not getting paid. So there's a real struggle that was going on. So the Canadian government, they went out on strike, the flight attendants, 10,000 strong. The federal government of Canada, the government ordered them back to work and said, if you don't go back to work, we're going to fire all of you. And they said, guess what? You need us more than we need you. We're staying out. And once they took that powerful stand and nobody broke, that strike was over within a couple days. And they won a lot of their main demands. So I'm just sharing that because we should recognize how much power we really do have in certain moments, exercise that power, and then not be afraid to stand strong. So I think there's a good lesson in all of us. And again, it very much ties back to the spirit that our forefathers and foremothers had in the Great Postal Strike. That enough is enough. We got the power and the leverage. We're going to go. They defied the government, they defied the bosses, and they defied the U.S. military, and they defied the President of the United States. And they won, and therefore we all won for the generations of postal workers that followed. So with that, brothers, sisters and brothers, APWU family, keep up the good fight out there. Keep up the good spirit until, one thing I forgot to raise, just so you all are reminded on the proclamation campaign. You can also go to, if you have any questions, we have a coordinator at headquarters level, and you can reach out at proclamations, plural, proclamations at apw.org. So feel free to ask your questions, seek help, share ideas, so we can make this campaign a great success and be in an ever stronger position to fight back with the public on our side and side by side with us as we fight to save our national treasure from the most serious threats we've certainly ever faced in modern times. So with that, keep up the good fight, keep up this fighting spirit. Be well, everybody. Solidarity forever. See you next time. You can download the podcast on all streaming services, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts regularly.